At 10:12 a.m. on April the 12th, 2016, a text was sent out. Hey, I need help. 20 minutes later, another text followed. Never mind, I figured it out. Little did 16-year-old Mekayla Bali know that her classmate and friend Shelby Hanatuk had left her phone home and the text went unseen. Shelby wouldn't see these texts until that evening when the school called to see if she had seen Mekayla that day. Shelby had no idea that Mekayla Bali would soon be gone without a trace. Not long before that call came from the school to Shelby, Margaret Niebergall had gone to pick up her granddaughter Mekayla from high school, but Mekayla wasn't there. After waiting for a little bit but becoming increasingly panicked because it was totally out of character for Mekayla to not be where she said she was going to be, Margaret decided to get her daughter, Mekayla's mother, Paula, at work. Both women knew that this wasn't like Mekayla. She wasn't where she was supposed to be and they couldn't reach her. Total panic set in. They went back to the school to see what was up and found out that Mekayla hadn't been in any of her classes that day or had seen any of her friends since earlier in the day. The two women searched high and low for Mekayla, even looking under the buses. Paula remembered Mekayla had a big violin recital coming up. She had actually been up the night before practicing, so they went to her violin class thinking that maybe Mekayla had gone there, but she wasn't there either. Then Paula thought about a stash of money that she kept at home for emergencies. She knew that Mekayla knew about the money, and Paula also knew that Mekayla would have taken at least some of the money if she'd run away, but not one single dime was missing. When the women checked Mekayla's room, they realized she hadn't taken her phone charger, her makeup, or her acne medication, which she was very self-conscious about and would never miss a dose of. By 8 p.m., after searching on their own for several hours, Paula reported Mekayla missing to the police. By 7 a.m. the next morning, Mekayla's cell phone was turned off, and she hasn't been heard from since, over 8 years ago. Although there have been several sightings of Mekayla Bali throughout the years, her whereabouts still remain unknown. Before I get into this story, I just wanted to say that there is so much information out there on Mekayla Bali and her disappearance, so I tried my best to condense it all without losing any important information. Mekayla Bali was born on July 2, 1999 as Mekayla Margaret Kim Niebergall in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. Her name changed from Niebergall to Bali 7 months before her disappearance, on September 11, 2015. Now I couldn't find out why her name changed, just that it did. Her mother, Paula Marie Bali, worked as a consultant for the Ministry of Social Services of the Government of Saskatchewan. Mekayla's father is not officially known, but after her disappearance, a man named Rick Brett was put forward as her possible biological father. What we do know is that Mekayla was raised in a single-parent home by her mother, and she lived with her mother, her aunt, her maternal grandmother, and her 2 younger siblings in Yorkton, Saskatchewan, Canada. Her maternal grandfather had just passed away in March of 2016, about a month before Mekayla went missing. Now, Yorkton is a city in Saskatchewan with a population slightly more than 16,000 people. It is about 450 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg and about 300 kilometers southeast of Saskatoon. Mekayla's mother, Paula, had described Mekayla as a shy and quiet girl who enjoyed playing the violin and participated in the drama club at her high school. She was attending the 11th grade at Sacred Heart High School at the time that she disappeared. One of her high school friends described Mekayla as, quote, caring and very conscious about what her friends' needs were. Mekayla had no history of disappearing for extended periods of time, and according to her mother, she was not a, quote, risky kid. Although she was bullied at times for her acne, her mother felt that around the time of her disappearance, Mekayla was, quote, hitting her stride. By all accounts, Mekayla was just a regular kid who liked to watch the Hunger Games, she liked to play video games, she liked to play her violin, and she was known as a voracious reader, and she enjoyed photography. She had a close group of friends and was said to be popular. Mekayla and her friends spent their lunch breaks at the Smoke Pit Doors, which was a rare entrance where smokers hung out, talking about music and gossiping about teachers. Her friends say that Mekayla didn't smoke, though, and that she wasn't into drugs. Sounds like me and my friends back in high school, actually. Some of her friends did recall this one time that she did show up at school with some pills and claimed that they were the opioid oxycodone. Who knows why? Teenagers do strange things to be cool or whatever. In the end, though, the police investigation did determine that these pills were actually Accutane, which was the pill that she was taking to treat her acne. And police have actually specifically stated in this case that they have no evidence to suggest that drugs were a factor in Mekayla's disappearance. Mekayla was close with her siblings and talked about wanting to be either a teacher or a vet because she loved children and animals. She had a dog named Angel who she liked to train to do new tricks. Her mom told police that she loved to play Man Tracker, which was based on an extreme hide-and-seek reality show with her little brother Joshua and sister Eliora. I hope I said that right. Like I have briefly mentioned in another video, I have a very close family member who went missing over 35 years ago. My brother, actually. I know firsthand what Mekayla's family went through and is still going through. I'm going to say something that I think only those that have been through this will understand. I think finding out that your family member has passed away is probably easier than never knowing what the hell happened to them. Trust me, your mind runs wild, and there's never any end to it. Somehow you manage to go on, but it never leaves you. You can't mourn because it's possible that they are still alive. It's just a big mix of so many emotions. So on the day that Mekayla disappeared, her family members have stated that nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary. But through the police investigation, some things leading up to her disappearance came out. So in the days leading up to her disappearance, Mekayla's high school friends reported that she talked about leaving town and going on vacation. She mentioned several places that she would be visiting soon. But according to her friends, that's the kind of thing that they all talked about. They used to talk about moving to a bigger city like Saskatchewan or Regina, where there were more things for young people and better places to shop, not like the quote, old lady clothes stores at their local mall. Quote, she kind of made like brief comments, but we all did, her friend Shelby said. I never took her seriously. And I think that anyone who grew up in a small town probably talked about leaving. I know I did. That in of itself is not unusual, but in Mekayla's case, given what we know now, it is alarming. So not long before her disappearance, Mekayla told her friend Oksana that she had about $5,000 in the bank. Now police have later stated that her bank statements show that she had nowhere near that amount of money. Mekayla didn't have a boyfriend at the time when she disappeared, but in the last year she had a boyfriend. They broke up, but they still remained close friends. Her friend Shelby also says that she connected with people online, reportedly at least 4 people that she knew of. However, the communications were often short-lived. There is, however, widespread belief that the day that Mekayla went missing, she was in contact with someone. The problem is, Mekayla used anonymous apps to communicate with people online, meaning that police were never able to trace her calls and texts. Now, one thing that came out in the investigation was that a few months before Mekayla disappeared, a bouquet of flowers was delivered to her school. She had never told anyone who sent them, and one of her friends, Hannah, commented that they came in a plain cardboard box. Now, according to the police, they came from an online order, but the sender's identity has not been made public. But in any case, the police have said that this person was ruled out as having anything to do with Mekayla's disappearance. Now, oddly, it also came out that about 6 weeks before she vanished, Mekayla had posted on Snapchat that she was looking for friends. She posted that she was, quote, looking for Snapchat friends because I have none in real life. Add me? Please don't be a greasy fucks and send me gross-ass nudes. Just looking for a friend. Now, Mekayla did have friends, but who really knows what she was going through that no one else knew about? It was also revealed that Mekayla had another Instagram account under her name that had hundreds of followers but no photos, and in her About section, it just simply said goodbye. So the day before she vanished, Mekayla went to a fast food restaurant for lunch with Shelby and Oksana. The girls told police afterwards that they remembered Mekayla was talking about going somewhere during that lunch, perhaps Moose Jaw or Prince Albert. Shelby and some of Mekayla's other classmates recalled her saying that she was going to Regina for a vacation with her family. Shelby thought she might have also said Saskatoon. As well, Shelby told police she remembered Mekayla talking about a boy named Josh, but Mekayla did not respond when she asked about him. Following lunch, Mekayla went back to her school to take a class on Christian ethics. Later, her teacher would tell police that she seemed to be upset in class. At 4:35 p.m., after school was over for the day, Mekayla texted Oksana asking for a ride to the bank the next day, adding that it was really important. Mekayla then proceeded to call the TD bank customer service 3 times between 5:30 and 6 p.m. She checked her account balance and transferred $25 to her account. I find this odd, like where did this money come from? Did she have more than one account? Was it someone else's account? Between 8:50 p.m. and 9:30 p.m., she texted her ex-boyfriend, Shelby, and another friend named Amy. Now, police can use TELUS data from cell phone towers to find out who sent and received messages, but the company does not retain any information from the messages, so in order to determine what was sent, investigators had to rely on friends and family to provide copies of their texts. Now, according to this friend Amy, Mekayla told her that she needed help, but would not respond when Amy asked why. And in a later interview with police, Amy said that Mekayla mentioned meeting with a man named Christopher who was going to come to Saskatchewan to meet her because he would be visiting his mom in Saskatoon. Mekayla messaged Shelby about a boy, saying that she felt bad for someone who was crying. I don't really understand this, but the drift I get is that neither did Shelby. It was like Mekayla was describing some girl who was upset over a boy and how the girl was crying, but people have actually wondered here if Mekayla was talking about herself. According to her ex-boyfriend, she was messaging him saying that she was unhappy and thinking of going to Regina for a couple of days. So on the day of Mekayla's disappearance, we have something in this case that is really not normally that available. We pretty much have a complete timeline and video of Mekayla's movements the entire day, up to about the point where she actually disappears. Between CCTV talking to friends, witnesses, and local businesses that Mekayla was in the day she disappeared, police have pieced together most of what she was doing that day. At 6:41 a.m., Mekayla texted Oksana, "Can you take me to the bank?" Oksana refused, saying that the bank was not open for a few more hours. Her grandmother, Margaret, then drove Mekayla to school, and she arrived at school between 8:10 and 8:20. The school Wi-Fi network showed she logged on at about 8:08 a.m. The school's CCTV footage shows her putting a binder into her locker at 8:21 a.m., and police would later say that this binder had nothing of significance in it. By 8:26 a.m., Mekayla left the school through a back entrance. She was next seen by surveillance camera walking southeast along the railroad tracks. The clerk of Terry's Pawn and Bargain, which was a local pawn shop, told police that between 8:40 and 8:50 a.m., Mekayla had attempted to pawn a silver ring, but because silver was such low value, he did not make her an offer. He said that she didn't seem upset and she left, heading south. At 8:51 a.m., surveillance footage shows Mekayla talking on her phone while she waited for the doors to the TD Bank to open. She ended the call and approached a teller when a worker slid open the shutters at 8:55 a.m., and she withdrew $55. After she left the bank, she stood outside the bank for a bit talking on her phone. Surveillance footage then shows Mekayla at 9 a.m. walking east on Broadway Street. Surveillance footage from the local Home Hardware shows Mekayla striding down the sidewalk towards a combined Tim Hortons/Wendy's, where cameras recorded her entering the restaurant at 9:10 a.m. She bought a drink with cash and sat down at a booth opposite the glass door, facing away from the main entrance. She could be seen in the footage turning every now and again to look at the entrance. She seemed to take her phone apart at one point and put it back together. Then she started using it again. Mekayla sat there in that booth for the next 13 minutes. The stuffed backpack she'd been carrying since she left school is on the table next to her, stretched to the brim of what was inside. At 9:23 a.m., Mekayla grabbed her bag and walked out of the restaurant through one exit, but she quickly turned around and walked back through the same door into the restaurant to then cross the restaurant and exit through the door on the opposite side. Mekayla walked north past the surveillance camera at Home Hardware until she was out of view. She reappeared on the Home Hardware camera at 9:42 a.m., emerging from behind a giant Tiger store and heading back to the Tim Hortons. At 9:49 a.m., she returned to the restaurant and sat down at another table. Over the next 20 minutes, she used her phone. She had her phone up to her ear as she walked inside the restaurant at 9:49 a.m. This time, she sat at a different booth closer to the window and facing the door. She ended her call, but for the next 10 minutes, she appeared to be waiting. She was sending text messages, browsing on her phone. She seemed to be looking out the window periodically, and it also seemed to be that she made a lengthy phone call. At 10:12 a.m., she texted her friend Shelby saying, "Hey, I need help." Now, Mekayla is on and off her phone 6 times over the next half hour or so, and it's during this time that she sent Shelby the second text saying, "Never mind, I figured it out." At one point, she grabbed her bag while talking on the phone and left the restaurant. Less than 2 minutes later, she walked back in and sat down in the same booth. During one of the phone calls at 10:39 a.m., she looked around. At 10:43 a.m., she was off her phone again. She left her seat and approached an older lady sitting at a table near her booth. The lady would later tell police that Mekayla had asked her for help in renting a hotel room, which she declined. After the conversation, Mekayla used her phone again and left the restaurant for the last time. At 10:45 a.m. to 11:55 a.m., Mekayla's actual whereabouts are unknown. After leaving the Tim Hortons, cameras show her at 10:45 walking west on Broadway Street. She took a short turn down 7th Avenue, but returned to Broadway Street east, continuing westward until she left the camera's view, and she did not appear on any other surveillance footage for more than an hour. But shortly after that footage, an employee at the local STC bus depot recalled to police that Mekayla had been at the depot asking when the next bus to Regina would leave. Upon being told that it would not be until 5 p.m., Mekayla left without buying a ticket. So we know now that's where she was in that period that she wasn't seen on surveillance footage. Mekayla then walked back to her school, shooting Shelby a text that "I'll see you at lunch." At 11:59, Mekayla re-entered her school and met with 2 other students in the school cafeteria. She told them that she was going to take a bus for vacation to Regina. One of them would later tell police that Mekayla might have had 2 phones with her at the time. 4 minutes after Mekayla arrived at the school, cameras show her leaving the school at 12:03 p.m. The footage shows her walking away, stepping out of view as she rounds a corner away from the school. And that is the last time that Mekayla is picked up on any surveillance footage that day. Now, she was seen by eyewitnesses at the Trail Stop restaurant, which is attached to the STC bus depot, where she ordered lunch, and according to witnesses, she left the restaurant between 1 p.m. and 1:45 p.m. After that, no one remembered seeing her, and like I said, she did not appear on any other surveillance footage. What happened to Mekayla after that is unknown, but she vanished. So police were able to verify that Mekayla did not get on any of the buses that day. So there's many theories about what may have happened to Mekayla. And I think it's safe to say that there is a lot of information, a lot of theories floating around the internet, but really nothing that can be substantiated. And if police have any theories about what happened to her, they have not said publicly. I'm sure they do. What they have confirmed is that there are no suspects in this investigation. Now, Mekayla's mother, Paula, believes that she may have been the victim of human trafficking, which is very possible. Quote, "Tips have come in suggesting certain things. Whether it was drug-related or human trafficking-related, we followed up on those tips and it resulted in nothing," said Police Sergeant Donna Zazalak from the Historical Case Unit. But that does not mean that Mekayla did not end up in a human trafficking ring. It happens way more than people like to believe. Before I get into the theories, I think for me, the money trips me up a little bit. First of all, why was it so important to call customer service 3 times the night before she vanished only to transfer $25? Where did that $25 come from? Was it from another account she had? Someone else's account? Do the police know the details of this banking transaction? Maybe, but if they do, I couldn't find it. And what was so important about waiting outside the bank the morning of her disappearance to only take $55? And there was money at home that she could have taken, but she didn't. And she kept everything on the down low. Whatever was going on with her, she didn't want anybody to know. So on to the theories. One theory is that Mekayla did something to herself, resulting in her death. Sorry, but I'm trying not to say the word, but you know what I mean. I guess in this case you could say that it makes sense why she didn't take the things with her that one would expect, like her phone charger, her makeup, and her acne medication. But Mekayla didn't show any signs to the people that knew her best that she was depressed or unhappy to the point where they could even consider this as a possibility. She talked to her friends about the future, and she was excited about telling her friends that she would be going on vacation and she was planning on visiting different places. According to her mother, there was no indication that anything was wrong the morning of her disappearance. A few of her friends did report that she was unhappy. Some reported that she was upset the night before, and her teacher did say that she was upset in class the day before. I mean, despite the fact that we never know how depressed or defeated someone may feel on the inside, there doesn't seem to be any indication here that she was that far gone that she could have hurt herself. Not only that, but Mekayla had a plan. Whatever that plan was, we do not know. However, she planned to transfer money. She planned to wait outside the bank to withdraw money. If she was about to end her life, why would she need money? She planned to take a backpack stuffed with whatever it was that she had in there. I've actually never seen what it was that she had in her bag. But anyway, she planned to get a hotel room. I guess you could argue here that that was to do something to herself there. She planned to get a bus ticket. Again, I guess you could argue that she planned to do whatever she was going to do to herself away from her hometown for whatever reason. However, It seems much more likely that Mekayla had other plans that day. Who was she talking to on and off all day? I guess you could argue here too that this person or persons was trying to talk her down, possibly. Again, we have no idea what they discussed since we don't even know who it was that she was talking to. In addition, Mekayla's body has never been found. Could it be possible? Yes, of course, but it doesn't seem likely when you look at the bigger picture. Another theory is that Mekayla ran away, either to escape or to start a new life. And although this theory is more likely, it still has some pretty significant holes. Yes, Mekayla had a bag stuffed with whatever, and that definitely seems like she intended to at least be gone for some time. If she were to run away, wouldn't she take some of her most important possessions with her, like her charger, or her acne meds, or her makeup? Due to the amount of time that she spent on her phone that day, she knew she would need her charger, so that seems odd. I guess it's possible that she could have had another charger. However, one could argue that she wouldn't need a charger anymore since she didn't plan on contacting anyone anymore. We know that Mekayla was self-conscious about her acne. Why would she leave her acne medication or makeup behind? It's possible, but I think she'd still want that stuff until she got where she was going. Unless, I suppose, of course, she knew she would be living on the streets and didn't care about her acne or makeup. However, those who knew Mekayla best claim that that's completely out of her character. Perhaps she ran off with a guy to start a new life, but again, probably even more so, she would want her makeup and acne meds because she's going to want to look her best. That doesn't make sense to me. Unless this guy and Mekayla came up with this elaborate scheme for her to intentionally leave these things behind to make people think the worst had happened. I mean, that's possible. Aside from all of that, Mekayla would have needed money if she'd been running away. Yes, it is possible that she had more money than we know about. It doesn't seem right, though, that she could have accessed the money at home and didn't. Maybe she cared too much for her family, though, to touch it. For me, even though I do not think this is what happened to Mekayla, this makes her waiting outside the bank for a mere $55 make more sense, because she would need every last cent that she could get her hands on. In addition, I don't think she would have told her friends that she was going away in order to raise their suspicions. Unless, of course, it was her way of saying goodbye. Then there's the Instagram account that merely says goodbye. It really would make you wonder if she just took off, and that was also her way of saying goodbye. But it's safe to say that the main and probably the most accepted theory of what happened to Mekayla that fateful day involved some scenario where she met up with someone, probably someone she met online, also probably someone who was a predator, who groomed her and then kidnapped her, or worse. To start, we know that Mekayla met people online. We know Mekayla was only 16, which is a very vulnerable age to be groomed by a predator. We know Mekayla had been bullied for her acne. We know that she was at least somewhat unhappy and desperate for friendship. At least if we look at that post she put on Snapchat 6 weeks before she went missing. Whether real or imagined, Mekayla felt lonely and was looking for friendship, making her vulnerable to predators. I know this doesn't really make sense because she did have a group of close friends, but maybe she still felt like she didn't belong or something. Sometimes the most trivial things can make a teenager feel alone and like they have no friends. We know Mekayla did not have a father in her life, and her grandfather had very recently passed away. That also makes her somewhat vulnerable to a manipulative predator. Perhaps she was compensating for the loss of her grandfather and/or the absence of a male figure in her life. We know Mekayla wanted to move to a bigger city. A predator could have offered her, I don't want to say better, but in her mind, a better life, and that could have also made her vulnerable. She was only 16, which is a very tender age for a girl. Perhaps she met some guy online who promised her a beautiful life together and showed her love and affection. She was probably very susceptible to that because she was only 16 after all. When you watch the footage of Mekayla the day she vanished, it seems like she was doing everything with a purpose. Even the day before, she was trying to get a ride to the bank. Several times she called the bank. She transferred money. She was letting her friends know that she was going on vacation. Nobody knows what her plan was, but it is very likely she planned to meet someone that day. Her fate after they met is anyone's guess. Her mother has said that she believes Mekayla was put into sex trafficking, and well, yeah, I think that's very possible and falls right in line with this theory. We know Mekayla was communicating with someone that day. Whether she was making calls, texting, or messaging, she spent half of her day on their phone. It's very, very, very unfortunate that we cannot determine with who, because that is probably the key to this whole mystery. When you watch Mekayla on the Tim's footage, it's as if she's looking for someone. After going outside, she returns and exits through the other side entrance, circles around a few stores, and returns to the restaurant, as if she was checking to see if the person's there. Now that may never be, but that's kind of what I thought of when I watched her. We know Mekayla wanted a hotel room that day. Who knows why, but I have a few ideas. She tried to get a lady at Tim's to help her get a hotel room, but the lady declined. Now the lady later told police that she couldn't remember if Mekayla needed the money to get the room or just someone to book it for her since she was still a minor. Whatever the case, that plan fell through. So Mekayla then headed back to school after a quick stop to check and see when the next bus was leaving for Regina. In between the Tim's, the bus stop, and the school, there is some missing time where we really don't know what she was doing, but I suspect she either decided to or was convinced to get a bus to meet the person she was communicating with, which is why she stopped at the bus depot to see when the next bus was leaving, only to find out that the next bus wasn't going out till 5 p.m. She doesn't get a ticket. Is that because she couldn't afford it, or was it because the bus was leaving too late? We do not know. We do know Mekayla needed money that day. I don't understand how that fits into this theory except for the fact that she inquired about a bus ticket to Regina, seeing as she probably would need money obviously for the ticket and probably some spending money to eat, or so on. That makes sense. However, the bus fell through. Maybe she realized the bus was leaving too late, or maybe the bus was too expensive. But what happened then? Did the person that she was trying to meet up with finally decide to come pick her up? Because she wasn't able to secure a hotel room that he could, slip into, or because Mekayla wasn't able to get a bus to him. So finally he decided, I'll go pick her up somewhere myself, perhaps somewhere where there's no cameras, maybe? It's possible, even likely, that Mekayla never intended to leave Yorkton, but her initial plan fell through. Maybe the person she was in contact with played on her eagerness to meet up and convinced her to let him pick her up. Perhaps she was trying to be safe by meeting up with him on her own terms, but the plan kept falling apart, so she finally relented and agreed to be picked up. We don't know. But why else would she hang around the bus depot for approximately 2 hours? Yorkton is about a 2-hour drive from Regina. Did she wait for someone from Regina to pick her up? Now I'm saying Regina because that's where she asked about tickets to, and also a place that she had mentioned to her friends on multiple occasions. Also, there is the possibility that Mekayla ran into some random person who did something to her when she left the bus depot. It's possible that Mekayla did intend to come home later that day, or maybe she even planned on spending the night out and would deal with the consequences at home when she returned. She probably planned on being back by the time her grandmother picked her up from the school. Maybe that's why she left the bus depot at 1:45, to make sure that she got back to the school in time, but things took a turn for the worst. We don't know. Maybe Mekayla didn't think anyone in her family would notice anything strange that morning, because as long as she got back in time, her family wouldn't even know anything. Again, knowing everything that Mekayla left behind, it is highly likely that she did plan on coming back home at least some point. Whatever happened to her when she left that bus station, she has never been seen again. There are still many things, though, with this theory that don't make sense either. You would think that if she were being groomed by some creep, that he would offer her money to get a hotel, to get a bus ticket, and so on. Would Mekayla really fall into the clutches of some creep who expected her to pay for everything? Perhaps she thought she was talking to another 16-year-old, though, who didn't have money just like herself. Unless it was part of an elaborate scheme on the creep's part to make Mekayla feel defeated and ultimately forced to send him to pick her up. Maybe he wanted her on camera all day asking about tickets to Regina, to throw police off his real trail. Maybe Regina is a red herring. Get the cops focused on Regina, while I just continue on my life wherever. For all we know, he could have been a neighbor pretending to be in Regina. Maybe he was a broke creep, after all, who couldn't get her the money. Like I've said, money seemed to be very important to Mekayla that day. She worked hard to get as much as she could. She knew her mom had money at home, so why not just take it? Unless she didn't want to deal with the consequences, and by that I mean being caught. But why would she care about being caught if she wasn't planning on coming back? So it seems more likely that she was planning on coming back home at least at some point. Otherwise, like I said, why would she care? I don't know, but I feel like the money stuff trips me up. It feels like a big piece of the puzzle is missing. And this piece may very well be known to the police, like I've mentioned, and lots of times to protect the investigation they keep things very close to their chests. But looking at the big picture, why did Mekayla need more money? Why didn't whoever was grooming her give her money if this theory is what happened to her? I think we would know what happened if we knew the pieces of the puzzle about the money and who she was talking to that day. I honestly cannot believe that between privacy laws and apps not storing data, we cannot figure out who Mekayla was talking to that day. It's just ludicrous. I think when you look at the whole picture, it's pretty clear that Mekayla was most likely groomed and led astray, and who knows where she ended up. So I know I've mentioned a lot of what came out in the police investigation, but I just want to run through the investigation again. So Mekayla's case was initially handled by the Yorkton RCMP, which asked for help locating her on April 14th, 2016. After 3 weeks, her case was handed over to the General Investigations Section, which is a dedicated unit that investigates major offenses. On July 21st, 3 months after she went missing, the RCMP escalated their search by issuing a child search alert for the 3 provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. On the first anniversary of Mekayla's disappearance, the RCMP Historical Case Unit took over the investigation. On December 4th, 2017, the child search alert was renewed and expanded across Canada. So police in this case had to review hundreds of hours of surveillance camera footage, which was provided by local businesses. In the end, we get to see pretty much all of her movements on April the 12th, except the part that really matters. What happened to her? So despite the phenomenal CCTV footage of Mekayla, police ran into a huge roadblock when, despite being on her phone most of the day, not one single phone call that she made was registered by her cell phone provider. So it's believed here that Mekayla was using social media apps to communicate. And another brick wall that police ran into was, long story short, because of privacy laws in the States, it took the police 10 months to get any information about her social media. But in the end, they were still not able to determine who Mekayla was talking to the day she disappeared. And I think that is probably the biggest missing piece in this whole mystery. I'm pretty sure if we could find out who Mekayla was talking to that day, we would probably understand a whole lot more about where she is, or have some indication of what may have happened to her. And as you can imagine, this was a major setback in the investigation. So it's believed that Mekayla was using online platforms like Snapchat and Instagram to communicate that day. Actually, another app that was identified is something called Kik, which has some dark history. Police claim that the app has been used by kidnappers to groom young women, and due to the nature of the app, people can talk to each other without any sort of approval system like friend requests, say, for example. Being that this happened in 2016, a major social media campaign was started to find information about Mekayla and her whereabouts, and this campaign actually brought the tips flooding in. But keeping track of that information for the police became one of the biggest challenges, because they were just inundated with information, and they had to make sure that no detail got lost in the mix, no matter how small it seemed. So police went to her school and of course checked with her friends. Nothing really strange came up, but, the few things that I've mentioned before, like the fact that she was communicating with people in other parts of Canada and the United States. Her 2 friends, Shelby and Oksana, mentioned their lunch date the day before, where Mekayla was saying that she wanted to go somewhere else. There was the report from the teacher that Mekayla was upset the day before she vanished in one of her classes. And then there was the other students that reported to police that she had been talking about going on vacation. Some said to Regina, others said to Saskatoon. Police also discovered the conversation that Mekayla had with Oksana about going to the bank the morning of her disappearance. They also discovered that Mekayla had called the bank 3 times, the fact that she had transferred the $25. Shelby had mentioned to police that Mekayla had mentioned the day before when they went on that lunch outing about a guy named Josh, but she said that when she asked Mekayla about him, she just ignored her questions. Police also discovered that Mekayla had told her friend Amy about the Christopher who was supposed to be coming to Saskatchewan to see her. They also found out about the text messages with Mekayla and her ex-boyfriend and Shelby and Amy the night before, where Mekayla had said to Amy that she needed help, but she wouldn't answer Amy when Amy asked her why. They found out how she had texted her ex-boyfriend that she was unhappy and thinking of going to Regina for a couple of days. They found out about the weird conversation that she she had with Shelby about a boy, something along the lines of that she felt bad for someone because the girl was crying and very, very upset. And like I said, I don't really think that Shelby really understood what this conversation was about, and I think a lot of people since then have maybe kind of thought that Mekayla could have been talking about herself here. So obviously I'm no investigator, but I think it's pretty obvious that something was going on with Mekayla. She was upset about something and was trying to tell her friends without telling her friends, if you know what I mean. Like maybe she wanted to tell them, but maybe she was also told not to, so she'd kind of start but then decide against it. To me, it's almost like she was somewhat conflicted. Like she wanted to let them know what was going on, but she was also afraid, maybe, of telling them what was going on. So employees at the bus depot told police that Mekayla seemed normal to them that day. She looked normal. Nothing seemed to be out of the ordinary. But about a week after Mekayla disappeared, these employees contacted the police again about a customer who had seen Mekayla that day. Apparently, she was seen with a big guy carrying white bags leaving the Trail Stop restaurant. Now, at this time, this must have seemed like such a glimmer of hope. So the police put out a sketch of the man with a stocky build, muscular arms, dark hair, and a large, prominent tattoo of a fiery cross on his forearm. Police announced this man was a person of interest. Finally, they must have thought something. But the man contacted the police himself, and as it turns out, he was just someone who held the door open for Mekayla. What a letdown. Police were also able to locate several online acquaintances of Mekayla, and they contacted the hotels in the area. However, none of these efforts led to any further leads. Police also discovered that when Mekayla went back to her school at lunch hour the day she disappeared, that the two friends she met with said that she was possibly using two phones. Now that was very interesting. So the day after Mekayla disappeared, her phone was shut off at 6:51 a.m. And there has been no banking activity, no social media activity, except for about 3 months after she disappeared, a Snapchat message that Shelby had sent Mekayla around the time she disappeared was marked as opened. Now, in August of 2017, the RCMP conducted a 3-day ground grid search in a wooded area near her high school in Yorkton. However, no new evidence regarding her whereabouts resulted from this search. Also in August of 2017, the RCMP sent its dive team to search Hopkins Lake, which is close to Mekayla's school. The RCMP said the search was not linked to any new tips or specific information, rather the need to cover off all possibilities, such as an accidental death. But, unfortunately, or fortunately I suppose, divers only found discarded golf balls and beer cans. In 2019, police began releasing extensive surveillance camera footage in hopes that it would bring new leads from people who saw Mekayla that day. Now, when her friends seen this footage, they reported a big red flag. So when they realized that Mekayla had a backpack, that was very strange to them because usually Mekayla only took a purse to school. They were worried that she had packed her stuff to go somewhere. And as you can see from the footage, this bag that she was carrying was stuffed to the brim. I've never actually seen on any of the reports what was thought to be in her bag. I've seen what they know wasn't in her bag, but not what her family actually thought that she took with her. I'm not saying here that that means anything at all, but it's odd that it's not reported what she actually took. Like, did she take a change of clothes, some underwear? Like, what was in her bag? Her family definitely has some good idea. I mean, I'd know to a certain extent what my 17-year-old kid packed. And I'm thinking you could probably make somewhat of an educated guess by what she took, whether or not she planned on coming back. Maybe this is irrelevant, I don't know, but it seems odd that we don't know what she actually took with her that day. So police discovered that Mekayla had another Instagram account like I mentioned, besides her usual one where it just said goodbye. It was also revealed through the investigation about her Snapchat account, where 6 weeks before she vanished, where she posted that she was looking for friends. Now, police did track down the Christopher that Mekayla had mentioned to Amy, and it turned out that Mekayla also mentioned this Christopher to her ex-boyfriend, with the same story, that he was going to visit her in Saskatchewan because he was coming to see his mother in Saskatoon. Now, Christopher, it turns out, was from North Carolina in the United States, and his house was searched, and the police found no evidence that he was in Canada during the time that Mekayla went missing. Now, CBC News also reached out to Christopher, who told them, quote, "All I can provide for you is that she suffered with self-harm a few years back. Back then, I was helping those who struggled, and I encouraged her to fight against self-harm and to look towards God. Now, this self-harm story from Christopher seems to be corroborated by Mekayla's description, where it says that she has a fair amount of scars on her upper thigh from self-harm. Anyway, long story short, Christopher was cleared from any involvement in Mekayla's disappearance. So police also had to follow up with a boy named Josh that a few of her friends had mentioned. So they did. They found a Josh who lived in Church Bridge, Saskatchewan, who said that he knew Mekayla. He said they saw each other about once a week at a youth gathering. However, they had not spoken for a few years. In the end, though, police did say that there was no indication that this Josh was involved in Mekayla's disappearance either. Another man that was investigated in connection to Mekayla was a man who came forward and claimed to be her biological father, a man by the name of Rick Brett. Anyway, this Rick Brett reported that he was never contacted by Mekayla and that he didn't think that she even knew his name. Oddly here, Mekayla's mother claims that there is no evidence that he is her father, whatever that means. I don't think it's fair to paint Mekayla's mother in any sort of negative light, but I have to say, that is an odd statement. Despite this, police did search this man's house. They took DNA samples and concluded that there was no evidence to suggest Rick Brett had anything to do with Mekayla's disappearance. And actually, since Mekayla has disappeared, he has started posting online about her disappearance on his own behalf, hoping to find out what happened to her. Police have said publicly that there is no evidence to suggest that Mekayla was suicidal at the time she went missing. So the investigation also revealed the bouquet of flowers that was sent to the school 2 months before Mekayla disappeared. Police did track down the person who sent the flowers and determined that they also had nothing to do with Mekayla's disappearance. So when police interviewed the guy who owned the pawn shop, he reported that Mekayla tried to pawn him a silver ring, but because it was of low value, he didn't make an offer, but he said she wasn't upset and she just simply left the store. Police spoke to the lady that Mekayla had approached at Tim Hortons, asking for a hotel room. She wasn't sure if Mekayla needed the money to book the hotel room or if she just needed someone that was old enough to book the hotel room for her. Either way, the woman had refused. So police had kept that tidbit of information under wraps for a long time. But after time, and when everything else seemed to turn up a dead end, they released this information to the public, saying that they were looking for anyone else that Mekayla may have approached that day for help. To my knowledge, nobody else has ever come forward. Sergeant Zazalak said, quote, "In Mekayla's case, we don't have any evidence to suggest that drugs were a factor in this." So Mekayla has been added to missing children's lists in Canada and the United States. Police do not believe that she ever bought a ticket or got onto any bus in Yorkton. Saskatchewan RCMP say that they contacted all the hotels in Yorkton and connecting cities, but that all turned up dead leads as well. Police say that they have investigated more than 600 tips since Mekayla disappeared, including sightings as far away as Scotland and Colombia, but none of these tips has ever yielded a confirmed sighting. So Mekayla's case is pretty well known, I guess because it's so mysterious and there was such a big social media campaign surrounding her disappearance. And in that campaign, one single social media post shared by police reached more than 1 million people. So over the years since Mekayla has vanished, like I mentioned, there have been numerous sightings. To date, none of these sightings have led to Mekayla, though that does not mean that she's not out there somewhere. So just a few sightings include: on October the 9th, 2016, it was reported that Mekayla was believed to be in Vancouver, BC. Her mother actually traveled to this city and set up a poster campaign to help locate Mekayla. In 2017, the police services of Tsuut'ina Nation reported that they believed Mekayla attended an event in January of 2017 at the Grey Eagle Entertainment Centre in Calgary, Alberta. On August the 8th, 2019, Paula received a call from a man claiming to have seen Mekayla in Edmonton, Alberta. He said that he believes he spoke to Mekayla outside the High Run Club in Edmonton back in March of that year. He didn't know Mekayla was missing at that time until he came across a social media post about her. Remembering the incident, he called the tip line on the post and spoke to Paula, and he told her that he was just outside the club and had spoken to who he believed was Mekayla for a few minutes. He went on to describe the girl as seeming like she didn't belong in that area, and he felt like she seemed very sweet and naive. According to Paula, that description made her hopeful that the woman was Mekayla. Quote, "When he described the person she was, I was kind of like, yeah, that sounds like Mekayla. She is a very gentle soul and she comes across that way." Another possible sighting of Mekayla panhandling in Penticton was made in January of 2020. However, local police were able to confirm that the person in question was not, in fact, Mekayla. And there have been other sightings, but those are the ones that I was able to find that are public knowledge. Now, several tips have centered the search for her in Vancouver, BC, as well as Seattle and Portland. In May of 2022, Homeward Bound, which is a project between the Saskatchewan RCMP and the Washington State Patrol, unveiled 2 trucks with wrapped photos of Mekayla on them. Quote, "The Mekayla situation is kind of unique because they thought she was spotted in Washington State, so they had created her missing person file there. So if you look on Washington State Patrol, she's in there with all the other missing kids," said Paula. So the aftermath of Mekayla's disappearance obviously is gut-wrenching to her family and friends, and has captivated the public because I believe of the mystery of her age and probably the social media campaign. Paula has said that when she was in Vancouver doing her poster campaign, she believed Mekayla was with someone who was, quote, influencing her decisions. Going on to say that Mekayla wasn't a kid who was anxious to leave home. She was a kid who, was a homebody. She didn't party, the sort of child you didn't expect a situation like this to happen to. Her friend Shelby has said that Mekayla's text to her that day, the one that said, "I need help," that she would have thought that maybe Mekayla would have needed a ride somewhere, or that she needed help with an assignment. She said that she never would have thought that by "I need help," Mekayla meant, quote, "I'm running away and not coming back." It's a hard feeling not knowing if she's alive or not. I wish I would have paid more attention. Maybe she did leave clues. I just didn't pay attention enough to put 2 and 2 together. I wish she would have talked to us, to anyone. When Mekayla first went missing, some of her classmates thought that she had run away. But the longer she was gone, the more they worried that she may be dead. And for the girls who hung out with her at the smoke pit doors, the emotions all came flooding back when it was time for them to graduate. Mekayla had always talked about wanting to wear a, quote, big poofy cupcake dress, Shelby said. Her mother, Paula, has said that she will never forget the day that Mekayla went missing. Quote, "Someone at work said, 'Your mom is here. She needs to talk to you about a family emergency.' I looked at my mom's face and I just knew something horrible had happened. My mom had never come to my work. So I knew the gravity of the situation immediately, and literally, your heart sinks to your gut." Paula has also said that, quote, "In my heart as a mom, I continue to choose to believe that she's alive. Until someone can prove otherwise, I will believe that." So Shelby had sent a message to Mekayla through Snapchat the day she disappeared, and somebody had opened that message about 3 months later. Quote, "It gives us a little bit of hope," she said. And Shelby sent another message from their grad ceremony to Mekayla, but to this date, that message has not been opened. The family started holding annual vigils for Mekayla, and their first one was held at the Sacred Heart High School on August the 12th, 2018, 2 years after Mekayla first vanished. An age-progressed photo of what Mekayla may look like at 19 years old was provided by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in 2019. In 2022, the family increased the reward to $100,000 through community donations. Sergeant Zazalak said that there is nothing to indicate Mekayla's disappearance was a homicide, and police are still holding on to hope that she will be found safe and alive. Quote, "Do we have suspicion that something happened to Mekayla that wasn't good? After all this time, I would say yes. Do I believe that Mekayla is out there alive and doing well? She could be," going on to say that there could have been some sort of accident. Then there are other darker possibilities. Quote, "Could someone have taken her and harmed her and now she's deceased? That is a possibility." Paula told the Regina Leader Post in April of 2023, quote, "I just feel like there's more. There is more. Someone out there knows something. I just can't imagine that 7 years later we still don't know what happened to our child." And like always, somebody knows something, and it is well past time that they speak up. Paula has also gone on to say, quote, "Mekayla's room looks the way it did when she left. You just hope she'll walk through that door one day so you leave everything in a time capsule. Mekayla's family needs to know what happened to her, whatever that may be." The RCMP say all it takes is one key piece of information to help push this investigation forward so they can bring Mekayla home to her family. At the time of her disappearance, Mekayla was described as 5 foot 2 inches tall, weighing 125 pounds. She has a fair complexion with blue eyes. At the time of her disappearance, her hair was blonde, but her natural color is red. Her distinguishing features include acne, a slight birthmark the size of a dime on her chin, a few scars on her forehead between her eyes from chickenpox, a whole row of scars on her thigh from self-harm, and protruding front teeth. Mekayla also sometimes wore glasses. When last seen, Mekayla was wearing her glasses, a teal/mint infinity scarf, jeans, a 3/4 length burgundy or purple coat, with her blonde wavy hair worn down. So Mekayla's family has a website dedicated to finding out what happened to her, and that is www.bringmekaylaballihome.com. That's www.bringmekaylaballihome.com. Anyone with any information about Mekayla Bali are asked to call the RCMP at 1-844-880-6518 and reference case number 201-643-0186. You could also call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-TIPS or 8477. There is also an email that you can send information to, and I believe this email is actually run by her family, and it is miraclemekayla@gmail.com. That is miraclemekayla@gmail.com. Hey everybody, I just wanted to pop on here to say thank you for all the support. I'm really trying to get a few things off the ground, so bear with me. I don't have the time that I would love to have to devote to this, so it's definitely for me a work in progress. So right now I have a very basic website set up. Just a free site with GoDaddy because I just wanted to kind of feel out the waters a little bit before I actually start paying for a website. Like I said, it's very basic, but I'm working on adding to it and would love and appreciate any tips that you may have. So if you would like to view the website, it is at www.unjustcrimes.godaddysite.com. Again, it's very basic, and I'm just kind of testing out the waters here. I'm thinking of adding some merchandise, maybe, I'm not really sure. Kind of going to see how it goes from here. I'm also working on getting the podcast uploaded onto other places like Spotify, for example. I originally started with YouTube because when I started a few years back, it really wasn't worth anybody in Canada's while to do a podcast with hosting in the States, unless you had some pretty good sponsors. And for me, with very limited time, I haven't been very lucky in that department. So YouTube felt like the right place to start. But I think I'm kind of ready now to start branching out a little bit, and I'll keep you posted on that. Like I've mentioned before, I do have a PayPal link on my YouTube page for anybody that would want to make a donation. Trust me, it's very much appreciated. It takes a lot of time to put these stories and videos together, and I really try very hard to put them together, always keeping the families of the victims and the victims in mind. I try to be as respectful as I can be because the last thing I want to do is to offend a family member who has already been through so much. You may now also follow Unjust Crimes on Facebook and Instagram, and I'll put those links in the comments to the video. And with all of that business out of the way, and until next time, thanks for your time and stay safe out there.